Imagine waking up one day to find out that the sixth largest military navy in the world doesn't belong to a nation, but to a soda company. In 1989, Pepsi didn't just sell sweet drinks, they commanded a terrifying armada of warships and submarines. How did a soft drink corporation accidentally become a global naval superpower? And why on earth was a desperate empire willing to trade its ultimate weapons just for sugar? Let's share a story.
To understand how this absolute madness happened, we have to travel back in time to the year 1959. The Cold War was at its peak. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a dangerous standoff, threatening each other with nuclear destruction. In an attempt to ease the tension, the American government decided to host the American National Exhibition in Moscow. They wanted to show the Russian people what life was like under a capitalist society.
During this exhibition, US Vice President Richard Nixon and Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev got into a heated, unscripted argument about which system was better, capitalism or communism. This event became famously known as the kitchen debate. Seeing the political tension rising, a clever American businessman named Donald Kendall, who was the head of Pepsi's international division, decided to make a bold move. He walked up to the angry Soviet leader and handed him a cold, refreshing glass of Pepsi. Khrushchev, sweating under the hot lights, took a slow sip. The crowd went completely silent. To everyone's shock, Khrushchev loved it. He smiled, turned to his comrades, and insisted that they try this delicious American drink. That single sip changed history, opening a secret door into the Soviet market that no other Western company could touch.
Soon after, Pepsi wanted to start selling their soda inside the Soviet Union, but they instantly hit a massive economic brick wall. The Soviet currency, the ruble, was a closed fiat currency. This meant that while it had value inside Russia, it was completely worthless on the international market. The Soviet government legally could not let rubles leave the country, and Pepsi could not use rubles to pay their American suppliers or shareholders. So, how do you trade between two superpowers when money is completely useless? The answer was old-school barter. The Soviet government offered a brilliant solution. They would give Pepsi the exclusive rights to import and distribute premium Russian vodka, specifically the famous Stolyatnaga brand, into the United States. In return, Pepsi would send their secret soda syrup to the Soviet Union. This barter system was a spectacular success. For over a decade, Americans fell in love with Russian vodka, while Soviet citizens became utterly addicted to American Pepsi. It became the first ever capitalist product to be legally manufactured and sold across the entire Iron Curtain.
By the late 1980s, the situation escalated dramatically. The Soviet people weren't just drinking Pepsi occasionally, they were consuming billions of cans of it every single year. Pepsi factories were popping up all over the Soviet Union. However, a major crisis was brewing in the background. In 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, which deeply angered the American public. In response, the people of the United States started a massive boycott against all Russian goods, including Stolichnaya Vodka.
Suddenly, Pepsi's sales of Russian vodka in America collapsed. But inside the Soviet Union, the demand for Pepsi was higher than ever before. The Soviet government faced a terrifying dilemma. Their economy was failing, their currency was still worthless globally, and they didn't have enough vodka to trade. Yet, they desperately needed to keep the Pepsi flowing. Why? Because the government feared that if they cut off the country's favorite soda, it could trigger a massive public riot and speed up the collapse of their fragile empire. They needed a new way to pay Pepsi, and they needed it fast.
Looking at their struggling economy, the Soviet leaders realized they only had one major resource left in abundance: surplus military hardware from the Cold War arms race. In 1989, they approached the executives of Pepsi with one of the most absurd proposals in human history. They offered to pay for their multi-billion-dollar soda debt using a literal naval fleet. Desperate for a deal, the Soviet Union signed over 17 old diesel submarines, a military cruiser, a frigate, and a destroyer directly to the American Soda Company. This transaction was valued at a staggering $3 billion. Just like that, a corporate board of directors whose primary job was managing sugar, water, and aluminum cans suddenly found themselves in possession of a deadly military force. For a brief moment in time, Pepsi officially owned the sixth largest submarine fleet on the entire planet. The CEO of Pepsi, Donald Kendall, famously joked to the United States National Security Advisor, saying, quote, "We are dismantling the Soviet Union faster than your military is."
So, what does a soda company do with an armada of deadly warships? Did they plan to start an ocean blockade against Coca-Cola? Or perhaps invade a small island to harvest sugarcane? Not quite. Pepsi was a business, not a country. They had no sailors, no naval bases, and absolutely no desire to maintain lethal weapons. Almost immediately after taking ownership of the ships, Pepsi turned around and sold the entire fleet to a professional Swedish scrap metal company. The vessels were quickly towed away, cut into pieces, and melted down. Pepsi used the massive profits from this scrap metal sale to fund their continuous expansion and build brand new commercial pizza stores all across the Soviet Union.
Sadly for Pepsi, their massive monopoly didn't last long. Just 2 years later, in 1991, the Soviet Union officially collapsed and shattered into 15 independent nations. The historic contracts Pepsi had signed became completely invalid overnight, opening the floodgates for their biggest rival, Coca-Cola, to rush into the new market with aggressive capital. This unbelievable event remains one of the strangest anomalies of the Cold War era. It stands as ultimate proof that sometimes the power of a simple consumer craving can literally disarm a superpower.
What do you think about this crazy piece of history? Could you ever imagine a modern tech or food company buying a military fleet today? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I love reading your perspectives. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, make sure to hit that subscribe button to help our channel share more incredible stories. See you in the next one.